Oh, glad to get that off. 22 kilos, ridiculous. Right, let's get to work. Well, it's 6 o'clock in the evening, just at the start of the longest night of darkness of the year, the winter solstice, which means that I've got about 14 hours of darkness to get through. Now I'm hoping at least 7 of those will be sleeping. But what do I do for the other 7 here on my own? Well, firstly I've got a fire. Luckily this is the woods where I've got permission to camp, so I don't have to be too stealthy, so I can have the fire going as long as I want, really, which helps a lot. And then I'm going to do some cooking. I'm actually going to cook a Flemish stew, a beef stew cooked in beer. Now the Flemish name, apologies to the whole of Belgium for this attempt, I think it's called Stoofvlees, or the other alternative name is Stoverij. Again, apologies, I'll just call it Flemish stew from now on. I had this in Ghent in Belgium about 5 years ago, more or less to the day actually, just before Christmas. And it was served with chips and mayonnaise and was really, really lovely. I've never made it before, so it's a bit of an experiment. I can't do the chips and mayonnaise here, that's too tricky for me. So I'm just going to do the stew. I have, though, just to get me in the Belgian mood, been down to a shop down in Newcastle-under-Lyme, the nearest town to where I live, called the Hopwater Cellar, and they do all sorts of world beers. It's a great shop. They've got a really good range of Belgian beers, and they do one of my favourites here, the Castile Rouge, which is a strong cherry beer, but they do it in cans. Normally Belgian beers come in fancy bottles, which is great, but not when you're camping because they're a bit heavy. So I've got a couple of cans of that to get through. So I think I'm just going to crack this open, enjoy a little bit before I start thinking about getting the dinner on. It's going to take ages. It's about 2 or 3 hours cooking for this dinner. So I've made myself a pot hanger here for it to cook slowly. Right, cheers. Let's see what this is like, eh? Nice and cold anyway. I think it's just hovering above freezing, the temperature, so chilling isn't a problem. Cheers. Oh, that's nice. Right, so I'm just melting some butter, which is rock hard on account of the freezing weather. Let's melt that in there. And I've got some stewing steak here. I think they use chuck steak in Belgium. That's too expensive for me. I'm just going to add some of this, a bit at a time, to sear it, making sure I season it. Got this handy little seasoning thing. Got salt, pepper, and I think paprika. So a bit of salt. And I'm going to need my glasses for this. I can't see which one's which. That's the pepper. Okay, so just give that a stir, make sure it's nice and brown. And we'll buy gloves at the time. Okay, so the beef's all put to one side, and I'm now just frying off the onions in some butter just to soften them up. Right, so the onion's done. Just going to add the beef back in. I'm going to lose any. Okay, I've got all this lovely gravy here. Let's come out of the beef. Oops, that was scrape. Okay. Now, the beer that I'm going to use to cook that properly is this one, which is called Orval. I don't want to use the cherry beer, I think that would be too sweet. This is like a nice dark proper Trappist beer. I'm going to use the whole bottle. Might have a little sip. Oh, that's nice. Make sure that goes all the way down. Okay. Let that heat up a little bit on there first before I put it up on the pot hanger. While it's heating up, have here a little, is it bouquet garni they call it? Just bay leaf, thyme and a bit of rosemary, all out of the garden. So I'm going to put that in there. There's a clove as well. Right, so really I've just got to let that cook away for about, well, at least 2 hours, if not 3. But I'm in no hurry. I can have another beer, so I'll just gladly sit and watch that slowly cook. Okay, so it's been a good hour that's been bubbling away. So I'm going to do one of the secret techniques to make this authentic, apparently, which is to get some mustard, spread it on a bit of bread. I've got a roll just because it's round. A bit more on. It's English mustard, so it's quite strong. And then you put that, does it fit? I can tear a little bit off. Put that in the pot, like that. It's going to overflow if I'm not careful. Right, I'll just let that soak in a little bit. I think the idea is that that dissolves over the next hour or so. Obviously flavours it with the mustard, but also thickens the sauce. So I'm going to put that back on the pot hanger. And once that's gone down a little bit, I'll put the lid back on. Terrific race, the Belgians. Well, that was an iced tea, well worth the wait. Would you believe, after all that, it's now 11:30, so the evening's just flown by. It'll be bedtime in a minute, so I think there's just time for a little nightcap, just to round things off. I've brought with me a little hip flask, and this has got a very fine single malt, an Islay. It's an Ardbeg, and it was a present from my good friend Martin. Cheers, Martin, you're a good man. I know this is meant to be for Christmas, but I'm sure you wouldn't begrudge me having a little dram now to keep me warm. Good night, everybody. I'll see you in the morning. Morning, folks. Well, I made it through the night. It was a cold one, but I was lovely and warm. This is the setup I use. I'll just show you before I start to think about packing away. It's the DD 3x3 tarp, and the setup, bring you around the back, it's I think it's what they call a Adirondack shape, which is kind of like a plough point, but with a sort of hinge at the front. I'll just show you from the back. I think it's actually my favourite 3x3 setup. It's quite spacious. So as I say, it's a little bit like a plough point, except you have this kind of hinge of a ridgeline here. That means that the back section is a bit more vertical, so you've got a bit more space at the back. And then you've got this sort of open porch area here where you can sit under if it did start raining. And I've got my fire down there. Sleep system. Let's just show you the ground sheet first. That is a German army, what they call elephant skin ground sheet. It's supposed to be about the toughest you can get. Although the first time I used it, it actually got a hole in it as soon as I sat on it. That was on a camp sort of back in April. I had to repair it, but it's been fine since then. Good old British Army Gore-Tex Bivvy. I actually brought my Thermarest today. I don't normally bring it to this sort of camp. I tend to keep it for the tents, but it was a cold one, so I thought I won't take any chances. This is the warmest mat I've got. I'm a bit disappointed because I've noticed it does seem to have gone down, not completely flat, but every time I use it, it seems to be about 2/3 the inflation that it was when I blew it up. I don't know if that's just cold air or what it is, but a little bit concerned. Got to keep an eye on that. Sleeping bag is a synthetic bag, Mountain Hardware Lamina, which is, I think, goes to about -9. That's pretty much it. And the reason it was 22 kilos to fit all that in the rucksack was, well, what didn't help was about 4 kilos of meat, beer and water, but also little luxuries like the chair, for instance, like all this cooking stuff here, quite heavy steel pots, little table. It all adds up, plus the DD isn't the super light, it's just the standard. In fact, it's slightly heavier, it's the Pro version, which is even heavier. That elephant skin ground sheet is heavy, so is the Gore-Tex Bivvy. It's as heavy as a tent. So yeah, it all adds up. Oh, and of course, not to forget, all the metal work. Axe, knife and saw. So at least I know on my way home today it'll be a good few kilos lighter. Right, so now comes the horrid bit. Once that fire has burned out, I'm going to start thinking about packing all this away into that little rucksack. Well, there's been a bit of a glitch in the matrix, I'm afraid, folks, because it's raining. This wasn't supposed to happen. It started the moment I started packing up, which is always the way, isn't it? Managed to get everything in the bag though. It's the beauty of being under a tarp. Of course, the tarp is the last thing to be packed down. I'll do that in a minute. And this camera, of course, which is my posh camera. It's not waterproof, so I'm going to have to put it in a dry bag. That does mean I'm not going to be able to chat to you on the way home, probably take any more shots. So I'll have to say goodbye now. So thanks for sticking with this particular camp. Hope you enjoyed it, and have a great Christmas. All the best for the new year, and I'll see you on the other side. Take care.